The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor of the grand rosewood ballroom as Maya watched her brother Marcus stand at the microphone, his perfectly pressed tuxedo gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. She should have known the moment he cleared his throat with that familiar smirk that her world was about to collapse in front of 300 of Chicago's elite. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, his voice carrying the practiced confidence of a successful investment banker. Before we celebrate my beautiful bride Sophia, I think it's only fair that everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. His eyes found Maya in the crowd, seated at table 12 with the other distant relatives and family friends. My sister Maya has been struggling financially for quite some time now. In fact, she's so broke that she actually asked me if she could pay for her bridesmaid dress in installments. The laughter that rippled through the room felt like ice water in Maya's veins. Beside her, her best friend Zoe gripped her arm, whispering urgently for her to leave. But Maya found herself frozen, watching as her brother continued his public humiliation. "Can you imagine," Marcus chuckled, adjusting his platinum cufflinks, "asking your own brother if you can make payments on a $200 dress? That's the kind of financial planning that runs in half our family, I'm afraid." Maya's throat constricted as she remembered that desperate phone call 3 months ago, when her freelance graphic design business had hit its lowest point after losing 2 major clients in the same week. She had swallowed her pride and asked Marcus for help, not knowing he would weaponize her vulnerability at his own wedding reception. The humiliation in that ballroom would prove to be the catalyst that changed everything. But Maya's story with Marcus began long before that devastating night. Growing up in their sprawling Lincoln Park mansion, the 2 siblings couldn't have been more different despite sharing the same privileged upbringing. Marcus had always been the golden child, inheriting their father's sharp business acumen and their mother's social grace. From boarding school to Harvard Business School, his path seemed predetermined, paved with internships at prestigious firms and networking events where connections were currency. Maya, 3 years younger, had chosen a different route entirely, much to her parents' disappointment. While Marcus pursued finance, Maya threw herself into art and design, spending her college years at the Art Institute of Chicago developing her eye for visual storytelling. Her parents, Richard and Eleanor Blackwell, had tolerated what they called her creative phase, expecting her to eventually come to her senses and join the family's investment firm, Blackwell and Associates. "Art is a hobby, sweetheart," her mother had said during Maya's senior year, delicately cutting into her poached salmon at their weekly family dinner. "It's not a career for someone with your background. People like us have responsibilities." Maya had proven them wrong, at least initially. Her freelance graphic design business, Luna Creative, had taken off faster than she'd expected after graduation. Corporate clients loved her minimalist aesthetic and innovative branding strategies. For 2 years, she'd enjoyed a steady stream of work, enough to afford a trendy loft in Wicker Park and the creative freedom she'd always craved. But the creative industry was volatile, and Maya learned that lesson the hard way when the economic downturn hit. 2 of her biggest clients, a tech startup and a boutique hotel chain, had terminated their contracts within weeks of each other. Suddenly, the irregular income that had seemed manageable became a source of constant stress. She'd started taking on smaller projects, working longer hours for less money, but the math wasn't adding up. Her savings dwindled as she struggled to maintain her lifestyle while searching for new clients. Pride had kept her from asking for help until Marcus's engagement party, when she'd overheard her parents discussing her financial instability with barely concealed disappointment. "She's living paycheck to paycheck," her father had said, swirling his brandy in the crystal snifter. "At her age, she should be building wealth, not chasing artistic dreams." Eleanor had nodded gravely. "I just worry about her future. What happens when she wants to buy a house, start a family? You can't build a life on creativity alone." The conversation had stung because Maya knew they weren't entirely wrong. She was struggling, and the realization that her parents saw her as a failure had driven her to make that fateful phone call to Marcus. She'd chosen her words carefully, explaining that business was temporarily slow and asking if she could pay for the bridesmaid dress in 2 installments rather than the full amount up front. Marcus had agreed so readily that she'd felt relieved, grateful even, not realizing he was already planning how to use her vulnerability against her. The phone call had taken place on a rainy Tuesday evening in October. Maya sat in her loft, surrounded by half-finished design mock-ups and empty coffee cups, watching the city lights blur through her rain-streaked windows. The call itself had lasted less than 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes would haunt her for months. "Hey Marcus, it's me," she began, her voice carefully casual despite the knot in her stomach. "Maya, what's up? Isn't it past your bedtime?" The condescending tone should have warned her, but she'd pressed on. "I wanted to talk to you about Sophia's wedding. I'm honored to be a bridesmaid, really. But I was wondering if there's any flexibility on the dress payment. Business has been a bit slow lately, and I was hoping I could maybe split it into 2 payments instead of paying the full amount up front." The silence that followed felt eternal before Marcus finally responded. "Wow, Maya. I mean, I knew your little art business wasn't exactly thriving, but I didn't realize things were that bad." "It's not bad," she defended quickly. "It's just temporary. I have several potential clients in the pipeline, and things should pick up after the holidays." "Sure, sure. Look, don't worry about the dress. We'll figure something out. Family takes care of family, right?" She'd felt such relief in that moment, such gratitude for her brother's understanding. If only she'd known that Marcus was already mentally filing away her admission for future use, treating her vulnerability like ammunition to be deployed at the perfect moment. The wedding preparation period had been a minefield of subtle digs and passive-aggressive comments. Marcus would make jokes about Maya's bohemian lifestyle at family dinners, questioning whether she'd be able to afford a wedding gift, or joking about her feast or famine income. Each comment felt like a small cut, barely noticeable on its own, but collectively devastating. Their parents, seemingly oblivious to the dynamic, would nod along with Marcus's observations about fiscal responsibility and the importance of stable career choices. Maya began to dread family gatherings, feeling like an outsider in her own family, the cautionary tale of what happened when you chose passion over profit. The night before the wedding, Maya had finally secured a major contract with a national restaurant chain, a project that would not only solve her immediate financial problems, but establish her as a serious player in the corporate branding world. She'd considered sharing the news with Marcus, imagining how satisfying it would be to prove him wrong about her business prospects.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
But something had held her back, some instinct that warned her to keep her good news private. She'd gone to bed that night feeling optimistic about her future for the first time in months, never imagining that Marcus's public humiliation was still hours away. The wedding itself had been a spectacular affair, exactly the kind of event the Blackwell family was known for hosting. The grand rosewood ballroom, with its soaring ceilings and ornate gold fixtures, provided the perfect backdrop for Chicago's social elite to gather and celebrate. Maya had played her role perfectly throughout the ceremony and cocktail hour, smiling graciously and deflecting questions about her own romantic prospects with practiced ease. She'd even felt proud watching Marcus exchange vows with Sophia, remembering the little boy who used to build pillow forts with her on rainy Sunday afternoons. For a brief moment, she'd allowed herself to hope that marriage might soften some of his sharper edges, that becoming a husband might help him rediscover the empathy he'd seemed to lose somewhere along his climb up the corporate ladder. The reception had started beautifully. Maya had genuinely enjoyed catching up with cousins she hadn't seen in years and reconnecting with family friends who remembered her childhood art projects with fondness. She'd felt relaxed, even happy, as she watched the newlyweds share their first dance to Frank Sinatra's "The Way You Look Tonight." But then came the toasts, and with them, Marcus's decision to turn his wedding reception into Maya's public execution. "You know," Marcus continued from the microphone, his voice gaining momentum as he fed off the crowd's uncomfortable laughter, "Maya always was the dreamer in our family. While I was learning about compound interest and market analysis, she was finger painting and writing poetry. Our parents tried to guide her toward more practical pursuits, but she insisted on following her heart." The words "following her heart" dripped with such condescension that Maya felt physically nauseous. Around her, the other bridesmaids shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to laugh along or intervene. And where has that heart led her? Marcus paused for dramatic effect, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. To a studio apartment she can barely afford, working freelance jobs that pay about as much as my lunch budget, and asking family members for payment plans on basic expenses. Maya's vision blurred as the full weight of his betrayal hit her. This wasn't just public humiliation, it was character assassination, designed to destroy her reputation among their social circle while positioning Marcus as the responsible, successful brother who'd tried to help his wayward sister. Sophia tugged at Marcus's sleeve, whispering something urgent in his ear, but he brushed her off with a smile. "Don't worry, darling. Maya knows I'm just teasing. We Blackwells have thick skin, don't we, sis?" The spotlight felt burning hot as 300 pairs of eyes turned toward Maya's table. She could see pity in some faces, amusement in others, and worst of all, vindication in her parents' expressions, as if Marcus had just confirmed everything they'd been saying about her. Zoe's grip on her arm tightened. "We're leaving, now." But Maya found herself standing up slowly, her legs surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. The room fell silent as she walked toward the front, her burgundy bridesmaid dress rustling against the marble floor. Marcus's confident expression flickered with uncertainty as she approached the microphone. "Maya, what are you—" She took the microphone from his hands with surprising firmness. "Thank you, Marcus. That was quite a speech." Her voice came out clearer than she'd expected, carrying easily across the hushed ballroom. "Since we're sharing family financial updates tonight, I thought you might all be interested to know that yesterday I signed the largest contract in my company's history." The room's energy shifted palpably as Maya continued, her confidence growing with each word. The Meridian Restaurant Group has hired Luna Creative to rebrand their entire national chain. The contract is worth $1.2 million over 2 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Maya's revelation sank in. Marcus's face had gone completely white, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "But more importantly," Maya continued, looking directly at her brother, "I want everyone to know that Marcus is absolutely right about one thing. I did ask him about paying for this dress in installments, but not because I couldn't afford it. Because I was taught that smart business owners manage their cash flow carefully, especially when they're about to invest heavily in expanding their operations." The silence in the room was deafening. Maya could see her parents leaning forward in their seats, her mother's perfectly composed expression cracking for the first time in years. "You see, unlike my brother, I don't measure success by how much money I can spend on a single evening or how many people I can humiliate to make myself feel important. I measure it by building something meaningful, something that reflects my values and creates value for others." Maya paused, letting her words sink in before delivering her final blow. The Meridian contract includes an interesting clause. As part of the rebranding, they're looking for a flagship venue for their launch event, something prestigious, something that would make a statement about their new direction. She smiled then, the kind of smile that could cut glass. "I've already put in an offer to purchase the Grand Rosewood Ballroom, the very venue that Marcus rented for tonight's celebration. By next month, I'll own the place where he thought he could destroy my reputation." The room erupted in shocked murmurs and scattered applause. Maya could see heads turning, whispered conversations breaking out as the social implications of her announcement rippled through the crowd. Marcus finally found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak. "That's impossible. You can't just buy a venue like this overnight." "You're right," Maya replied calmly. "It took me 3 weeks of negotiations, due diligence, and financing arrangements. Funny how having a 7-figure contract makes banks much more willing to discuss commercial real estate loans." She handed the microphone back to her stunned brother and looked out at the crowd one final time. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. I hope Marcus's speech gave you some insight into the kind of person he really is." As Maya walked back toward her table to collect her purse, the ballroom remained in stunned silence. She could feel every eye following her movement, could practically hear the wheels turning as Chicago's social elite processed what they'd just witnessed. Zoe was already standing with Maya's clutch in hand, her face a mixture of awe and excitement. "That was incredible," she whispered as they headed toward the exit. "I can't believe you actually bought this place." "Neither can I," Maya admitted, her adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "But I meant every word of it." Behind them, the shocked silence was finally breaking as conversations resumed with renewed intensity. Maya didn't look back to see Marcus's face or her parents' reactions. She'd said everything she needed to say, and for the first time in months, she felt completely free. The valet brought Maya's car around quickly, and as they drove away from the Grand Rosewood Ballroom, Zoe peppered her with questions about the Meridian contract and the venue purchase. Maya answered as best she could, still processing the surreal turn her evening had taken. "So the restaurant contract is real?" Zoe asked, fastening her seatbelt as Maya navigated the familiar Chicago streets. "Completely real. I signed it yesterday afternoon." Maya felt a smile tugging at her lips as she remembered the moment she'd opened the email with the signed contract. "It's the break I've been working toward for years." "And the venue?" Maya's smile widened. "Also real. I'd been looking at investment properties for months, thinking about expanding the business. When Marcus announced his venue choice, I couldn't resist the irony." The truth was more complex than Maya had let on during her speech. The Meridian contract was indeed real and substantial, but the venue purchase had been more impulsive than she'd admitted. She'd toured the Grand Rosewood Ballroom 3 weeks earlier as part of her property search, been impressed by its potential as both an event space and a creative headquarters, and made an offer contingent on securing the restaurant contract. When the Meridian deal closed, she'd had exactly 24 hours to finalize the venue purchase before Marcus's wedding. The timing had been pure coincidence, but Maya had to admit it felt like divine intervention. "Your brother's face when you dropped that bombshell," Zoe laughed, shaking her head. "I've never seen someone go from smug to panicked so quickly." Maya's satisfaction was tempered by a deep sadness she wasn't ready to examine yet. Marcus wasn't just her brother. He'd been her first friend, her partner in childhood adventures, the person who'd taught her to ride a bike and helped her with homework. Somewhere along the way, success and social pressure had turned him into someone she barely recognized. "Do you think your parents knew?" Zoe asked quietly, reading Maya's mood shift. "About the humiliation speech? Probably not. Marcus likes to be the star of his own show." Maya pulled into her building's parking garage, grateful to be home. "About their disappointment in my choices? Definitely." They rode the elevator to Maya's loft in comfortable silence, both lost in thought about the evening's events. Maya's phone had been buzzing constantly since they left the ballroom, but she wasn't ready to face the barrage of messages and calls yet. Her loft looked different somehow as she stepped inside, flipping on the lights to illuminate the exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows. The space that had felt cramped and temporary just hours earlier now seemed full of possibility. "What happens now?" Zoe asked, settling onto the vintage leather couch Maya had found at a flea market. Maya poured 2 glasses of wine from a bottle she'd been saving for a special occasion. "Now I have a restaurant chain to rebrand, a venue to renovate, and a family to navigate." "In that order?" "The first 2, definitely. The family situation—" Maya trailed off, finally checking her phone. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 12 voicemails. That might take a while longer. The messages ranged from congratulatory to confused to concerned. Several family friends wanted to know more about the Meridian contract. Cousins were asking for details about the venue purchase. And her college roommate had sent a string of shocked emojis after apparently seeing social media posts from the wedding. But the message that caught her attention was from an unknown number. "Maya, this is Sophia. I'm so sorry about tonight. Marcus was completely out of line. I hope you can forgive me for not stopping him sooner. Congratulations on your success. You deserve all of it." Maya stared at the message for a long moment, surprised by the genuine remorse in Sophia's words. She'd always liked her new sister-in-law, a pediatric nurse who brought a warmth to family gatherings that had been missing for years. The fact that Sophia had reached out, despite the awkwardness of the situation, spoke volumes about her character. Want to talk about it? Zoe asked, noticing Maya's contemplative expression. Sophia texted. She apologized for Marcus's speech. Maya showed her friend the message. That's decent of her. Think she'll be able to rein him in? Maya considered the question as she sipped her wine. I don't think anyone can rein in Marcus except Marcus. He's convinced himself that success gives him the right to treat people however he wants. The truth was that Maya had seen this side of her brother emerging gradually over the years. The casual dismissal of service workers, the way he'd interrupt others in conversations, the increasing frequency with which he made jokes at other people's expense. Success had amplified his worst traits while diminishing his capacity for empathy. You know what the craziest part is? Maya said, settling into the chair across from Zoe. A part of me still loves him, even after tonight. That's not crazy. He's your brother. He's also someone who just tried to humiliate me in front of 300 people for his own entertainment. Maya's voice carried a weight of realization. I don't think I can keep pretending that family loyalty means accepting abuse. They talked until nearly 3 in the morning, dissecting the evening's events and discussing Maya's plans for the Meridian project. Zoe finally called a car home, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts and the growing magnitude of what she'd committed to. The Grand Rosewood Ballroom purchase wasn't just a real estate investment, it was a statement of intent. She was betting her future on her ability to transform not just the venue, but her entire business model. The responsibility felt overwhelming and exhilarating in equal measure. Maya spent the next hour walking through her loft, looking at her design work with new eyes. The freelance projects that had sustained her for years suddenly seemed like preparation for something much larger. Every logo she'd created, every branding strategy she'd developed, every client relationship she'd built was now part of a foundation she could expand upon. Her phone rang at 3:47 a.m., startling her from her planning reverie. The caller ID showed her mother's name, and Maya hesitated before answering. Maya, darling, I hope I'm not calling too late. Eleanor's voice carried an unusual uncertainty. It's nearly 4 in the morning, Mom. I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about tonight, about what Marcus said and what you revealed. There was a pause. I owe you an apology. Maya sank onto her couch, unprepared for this conversation. Mom, let me finish, please. Your father and I have been so focused on conventional success that we failed to recognize what you were actually accomplishing. The Meridian contract, the venue purchase, these aren't lucky breaks. They're the result of years of hard work that we dismissed as impractical dreaming. The admission hung in the air between them, years of tension and misunderstanding condensed into a single moment of clarity. Marcus was wrong to humiliate you tonight, Eleanor continued, but we were wrong long before that, and I'm afraid our attitude enabled his behavior. Maya felt tears threatening for the first time since leaving the ballroom. I just wanted you to be proud of me. Oh, sweetheart, I am proud of you. I've been proud of you all along, but I was too scared to admit it. Scared that supporting your unconventional choices meant I was being a bad mother, failing to prepare you for the real world. And now? Now I realize that you were preparing for the real world all along. You just saw it more clearly than the rest of us did. They talked until dawn, really talked, in a way they hadn't since Maya was a child. Eleanor shared her own dreams of opening an art gallery, dreams she'd abandoned when she married Richard and took on the role of society wife. Maya described the vision behind Luna Creative, the satisfaction of helping businesses tell their authentic stories through design. When they finally hung up, Maya felt a shift in her relationship with her family that went beyond the evening's dramatic revelations. Her mother's call had cracked open a door that had been sealed shut for years, offering the possibility of genuine understanding and support. The sunrise streaming through her windows seemed to illuminate more than just her apartment. Maya made coffee and began sketching initial concepts for the Grand Rosewood renovation, her mind already racing with possibilities for transforming the space into something that reflected both its historic grandeur and her contemporary vision. By the time most of Chicago was waking up, Maya had filled 3 pages with preliminary designs and begun drafting a business plan that integrated the venue acquisition with her growing client base. The humiliation that had driven her from Marcus's wedding reception had become the catalyst for the biggest expansion of her career. Her phone buzzed with a text from the Meridian Restaurant Group's CEO. Saw the social media posts from your brother's wedding. Congratulations on the venue acquisition. Would love to discuss using it for our launch event. Call me when you're ready to talk details. Maya laughed, realizing that Marcus's attempt to damage her reputation had actually provided her with the most effective marketing she could have asked for. By the end of the weekend, she'd fielded inquiries from 6 potential clients who'd heard about the Grand Rosewood purchase through the wedding guest grapevine. The irony wasn't lost on her. In trying to publicly diminish her success, Marcus had inadvertently announced it to exactly the demographic most likely to become her clients. Chicago's social elite were always looking for new venues and fresh creative talent, and Maya's dramatic revelation had positioned her as both. 3 days after the wedding, Maya stood in the empty Grand Rosewood ballroom, architect's plans spread across a folding table as she met with contractors and designers. The space that had witnessed her humiliation would soon be transformed into the headquarters of her expanding creative empire. The ornate chandeliers still hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floors, but Maya could envision how contemporary lighting and carefully chosen modern elements would create a dialogue between the venue's historic character and its future purpose. "The bones are incredible," said Jennifer Walsh, the interior designer Maya had hired to collaborate on the renovation. "We can maintain all the architectural integrity while creating flexible spaces for events, client meetings, and your design studio." Maya nodded, her excitement building as the vision became more concrete. "I want it to feel like a place where tradition and innovation can coexist, where the history enhances the creativity rather than constraining it." The renovation would take 6 months, during which Maya would continue operating from her loft while building the team necessary to handle her expanding client base. She'd already hired 2 junior designers and was interviewing project managers to help coordinate the increasingly complex branding campaigns her new reputation was attracting. The Meridian Restaurant Group contract alone would require a team of 8 people working full-time for 18 months. Maya had gone from struggling freelancer to creative director of a growing agency in the span of a single weekend, all triggered by her brother's cruel miscalculation. As she walked through the ballroom's adjacent spaces, envisioning conference rooms and collaborative work areas, Maya's phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and she debated letting it go to voicemail before deciding to answer. "Maya." His voice was subdued, lacking the confident bravado she'd grown accustomed to hearing. "Marcus, I called to apologize. What I did at the wedding was inexcusable." The words came out stilted, as if he'd rehearsed them. "I let my own insecurities drive me to hurt you publicly, and I'm sorry." Maya waited for him to continue, but the silence stretched between them. "Is that all?" she finally asked. "I don't know what else to say. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." "You humiliated me in front of 300 people because you were insecure?" Maya's voice was carefully controlled. "Help me understand that logic." Marcus sighed heavily. "Seeing you struggle made me feel successful by comparison. It was petty and cruel, and I knew it was wrong even as I was doing it." The honesty was more than Maya had expected, but it also revealed the depth of her brother's character flaws. "So my pain made you feel better about yourself?" Yes, the admission was barely audible. "And you thought sharing that pain with our entire social circle would somehow be appropriate at your wedding reception?" "I wasn't thinking clearly. I'd been drinking and—" "Stop." Maya's patience snapped. "Don't blame the alcohol. You planned this, Marcus. You've been making comments about my finances for months, building up to that moment." Another long pause. "You're right. I am right, and here's what's going to happen next. You're going to get therapy to figure out why hurting your sister makes you feel powerful. You're going to publicly acknowledge that everything you said about my financial situation was based on incomplete information and personal malice. And you're going to stay out of my professional life completely. Maya, I'm not finished. If you want any chance of repairing our relationship, you're going to do the work to understand why your behavior was so deeply damaging. Not just the wedding speech, but years of subtle undermining and casual cruelty. Marcus was quiet for so long that Maya wondered if the call had dropped. Okay, he finally said. You're right. I'll do whatever you think is necessary. I don't want you to do it for me, Marcus. I want you to do it because you recognize that the person you've become isn't someone worth being. After hanging up, Maya felt emotionally drained, but also strangely hopeful. For the first time in years, Marcus had acknowledged his behavior without making excuses or deflecting blame. Whether he would follow through on his commitment to change remained to be seen, but at least the possibility existed. The Grand Rosewood Ballroom seemed to absorb her complicated feelings about family, success, and forgiveness as she continued her walkthrough. This space would host celebrations and business meetings, creative collaborations, and milestone moments. It would be a place where people's dreams could take shape, where success could be celebrated without requiring anyone else's diminishment. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same spot where Marcus had delivered his humiliating speech, but the ballroom had been transformed beyond recognition. The crystal chandeliers remained, but they now shared space with sleek modern lighting that could be adjusted for any mood or event. The marble floors gleamed beneath carefully placed Persian rugs that added warmth without compromising elegance. The Grand Rosewood Creative Center buzzed with activity as Maya's team of 12 employees worked on campaigns for clients ranging from tech startups to established luxury brands. The Meridian Restaurant Group launch event had exceeded all expectations, generating national media coverage and establishing Maya as one of the most sought-after creative directors in the Midwest. Marcus had kept his word about therapy and had even issued a public apology through his LinkedIn network, acknowledging his inappropriate behavior and praising Maya's professional accomplishments. Their relationship remained strained but was slowly improving through careful, boundaried interactions. Their parents had become Luna Creative's biggest champions, with Eleanor even joining the company's board of advisors and using her social connections to generate new business opportunities. The family dinners Maya had once dreaded were now strategy sessions where she could share her successes without fear of dismissal or condescension. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when Sophia asked Maya to rebrand the children's hospital where she worked, a pro bono project that reminded Maya why she'd fallen in love with design in the first place. The work wasn't about revenge or proving herself anymore. It was about using her talents to make a difference in the world. As Maya prepared for the Creative Center's official grand opening celebration, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The humiliation that had nearly broken her spirit had instead revealed a strength she hadn't known she possessed, and the venue where her brother had tried to destroy her reputation had become the foundation of her greatest success. The evening light streaming through the ballroom's tall windows cast the same golden glow that had illuminated Marcus's wedding reception, but everything else had changed. Maya had transformed not just the space, but herself, proving that sometimes the most devastating defeats can become the launching pads for unprecedented victories. Standing in her domain, surrounded by the evidence of her success and the promise of future growth, Maya finally understood that her brother's cruel miscalculation had been the greatest gift he could have given her. It had forced her to stop seeking approval from people who would never truly see her worth and start building something magnificent on her own terms. The Grand Rosewood Creative Center would host hundreds of events in the years to come, but none would be more meaningful than that first moment when Maya claimed her space and refused to be diminished by anyone else's insecurities ever again. The morning after Maya's confrontation with Marcus brought unexpected consequences that rippled through Chicago's business community like stones thrown into still water. She woke in her Wicker Park loft to 17 voicemails from reporters, 34 interview requests, and a phone call from the Chicago Tribune's business editor wanting to feature her story in their weekly entrepreneur spotlight. Maya stared at her phone in disbelief, scrolling through messages from local news stations, business magazines, and even a producer from a national morning show. The wedding reception confrontation had apparently been recorded by multiple guests and shared across social media platforms overnight, turning her into an inadvertent symbol of entrepreneurial resilience. The irony wasn't lost on her that Marcus's attempt to humiliate her had instead generated the kind of publicity that companies paid millions to achieve. Her Luna Creative Instagram account had gained 15,000 followers overnight, and her website had crashed from the traffic surge. Potential clients from across the country were reaching out, drawn by the story of the woman who'd turned public embarrassment into professional triumph. But the media attention also brought scrutiny that Maya wasn't prepared for. Financial journalists wanted to verify her claims about the Meridian contract and the Grand Rosewood purchase. Industry publications were dissecting her business model and questioning whether her rapid expansion was sustainable. The success story that had seemed so clear-cut during her heated moment at the microphone now faced the harsh light of professional examination. Zoe arrived at Maya's loft with coffee and pastries from their favorite bakery, her expression a mixture of excitement and concern. "Have you seen the Chicago Business Journal article?" she asked, settling onto the couch with her laptop open. Maya shook her head, still processing the overwhelming response to what she'd assumed would be a private family moment. "Good or bad?" "Mixed. They're calling you a disruptive force in creative marketing and praising your unconventional path to success, but they're also questioning whether your business model can support the rapid growth you're planning." Zoe turned the screen toward Maya. "They interviewed 3 industry experts who are skeptical about your timeline for the Grand Rosewood renovation and the Meridian project simultaneously." Reading the article, Maya felt her stomach clench with familiar anxiety. The same voices that had dismissed her freelance work as unsustainable were now questioning whether her expansion was realistic. The criticism felt particularly sharp because it echoed her own private doubts about taking on such massive commitments in such a short time frame. "They have a point," Maya admitted, closing the laptop. "I made some pretty bold claims in the heat of the moment. Now I have to deliver on them." The weight of her public promises settled heavily on her shoulders as she reviewed her actual financial situation with clear eyes. The Meridian contract was real and substantial, but it required significant upfront investment in staff and equipment before the revenue would begin flowing. The Grand Rosewood purchase was contingent on several financing arrangements that weren't yet finalized. Her dramatic announcement had been truthful, but perhaps more optimistic than prudent. The next few days brought a crash course in crisis management as Maya navigated the media attention while trying to solidify the business deals she'd announced so confidently. The Meridian Restaurant Group's executives were thrilled with the publicity surrounding their new creative partner, but they also wanted detailed project timelines and staffing plans that Maya was scrambling to develop. Her meeting with the Grand Rosewood's current owners revealed complications she hadn't anticipated. The venue's historic designation required extensive regulatory approvals for any significant renovations, potentially adding months to her timeline. The financing package she'd arranged was solid, but came with strict performance milestones that would require careful cash flow management. "You've put yourself in a challenging position," admitted David Chen, the commercial real estate attorney she'd hired to guide the venue acquisition. "The publicity is beneficial, but it's also created expectations that might be difficult to meet within your proposed timeline." Maya sat in David's downtown office, surrounded by contracts and regulatory documents, feeling the first real pangs of doubt about her impulsive decision. The venue purchase had seemed like poetic justice in the moment, but the practical realities of commercial real estate development were proving more complex than her emotional response had considered. "What are my options?" she asked, reviewing the timeline David had laid out for the necessary approvals and renovations. "You could delay the public opening and focus on completing the Meridian project first, establishing stronger financial footing before taking on the venue renovation. Or you could bring in additional investors to accelerate the timeline, though that would mean sharing control of the project." The thought of bringing in outside investors triggered memories of her parents' constant advice about the importance of maintaining majority ownership in any business venture. But Maya was beginning to understand that pride and practical business sense didn't always align perfectly. Her phone buzzed with another media request, this one from a podcast that specialized in interviewing entrepreneurs who'd overcome public setbacks. The host wanted to explore how Maya had transformed her brother's wedding humiliation into a catalyst for business growth, positioning her story as inspiration for other struggling creatives. "Are you going to do it?" Zoe asked when Maya described the interview request over lunch at their usual spot near the Art Institute. "I'm not sure. Part of me wants to set the record straight about what actually happened that night, but another part of me worries that more publicity will just create more pressure to deliver on promises I might not be able to keep." Zoe stirred her soup thoughtfully. "What does your gut tell you?" Maya considered the question seriously. Her instincts had guided her through the freelance years, helping her identify which clients to pursue and which projects to decline. Those same instincts had driven her to stand up to Marcus at the wedding reception, even when logic might have suggested silent. "My gut says that running away from the attention won't make the pressure disappear. If anything, it might make people question whether I was telling the truth about my success." The decision to embrace the media attention rather than hiding from it marked a turning point in how Maya approached her rapidly expanding business. Instead of viewing the scrutiny as a burden, she began treating it as accountability that would force her to execute her plans with precision and transparency. Her first major interview was with Chicago Business Weekly, a respected publication that had covered her family's investment firm for decades. The journalist, Sarah Martinez, had done her homework, asking pointed questions about Maya's financial projections, staffing plans, and the regulatory challenges facing the Grand Rosewood renovation. "Some industry veterans are suggesting that your timeline is overly aggressive," Sarah noted, consulting her research. "How do you respond to criticism that you're promising more than you can deliver?" Maya had anticipated the question and prepared her response carefully. "I think there's a difference between being aggressive and being unrealistic. Yes, I'm moving quickly, but that's because I've been preparing for growth for years. The Meridian contract didn't come out of nowhere. It's the result of 3 years of relationship building and portfolio development." She pulled out her tablet, showing Sarah the detailed project timeline she developed with her newly hired project manager. "Every milestone has buffer time built in, and we've identified the critical path for both the venue renovation and the restaurant rebranding. I'm not gambling with my reputation, I'm investing in it." The interview ran the following week, with the headline, "From Wedding Crasher to Creative Powerhouse, Maya Blackwell's Calculated Risk." The article presented a more nuanced view of her business expansion, acknowledging both the impressive scope of her achievements and the genuine challenges she faced in executing her plans. More importantly, the article attracted the attention of Amanda Foster, a veteran creative director who'd recently left a major advertising agency and was looking for her next opportunity. Amanda reached out through LinkedIn, expressing interest in joining Luna Creative as a senior partner who could help manage the complexity of Maya's growing client base. Their first meeting took place at a coffee shop in River North, where Amanda laid out her vision for scaling creative agencies without losing their innovative edge. She had 15 years of experience managing large-scale branding campaigns and had been instrumental in several agency expansions that successfully maintained quality while increasing capacity. "The mistake most creative entrepreneurs make is trying to do everything themselves," Amanda explained, reviewing the current project load. "You're talented, but you're also becoming a bottleneck. What you need is a structure that can operate efficiently whether you're in the office or traveling to client meetings." Maya found herself drawn to Amanda's practical approach to business growth. Unlike the advisors who focused primarily on financial metrics, Amanda understood the creative process and the importance of maintaining artistic integrity while building commercial success. "What would partnership look like?" Maya asked, intrigued by the possibility of sharing the enormous responsibility she'd taken on. "I'd handle operations and client management, freeing you to focus on creative direction and business development. We'd restructure the company to support multiple project teams working simultaneously, with clear accountability and quality control measures." The proposal was tempting, especially as Maya contemplated the challenges of managing the Meridian project while overseeing the Grand Rosewood renovation. But accepting a senior partner would also mean acknowledging that her solo entrepreneur vision needed modification to succeed at the scale she'd committed publicly. The decision became easier when Marcus called to inform her that several family friends had inquired about Luna Creative Services for their own businesses. Despite the awkwardness surrounding the wedding incident, or perhaps because of it, Maya's story had resonated with Chicago's business community in ways that traditional marketing never could have achieved. The Hendersons want you to rebrand their restaurant chain, Marcus reported, his tone carefully neutral. And the Kowalskis are looking for someone to handle their real estate development company's marketing. They specifically mentioned wanting to work with someone who understands both creative vision and business pressure. Maya realized that her brother was essentially serving as an inadvertent sales representative, fielding inquiries from their social circle and directing them toward her growing agency. The irony was almost too perfect. Marcus's attempt to damage her reputation had instead become her most effective referral source. "Are you comfortable with that?" she asked, genuinely curious about his perspective on the unexpected role reversal. Marcus was quiet for a moment before responding. "I'm still processing a lot of what happened that night. My therapist says I need to focus on understanding my own motivations before trying to fix the damage I caused. But if I can help your business in some small way, it feels like a step toward making amends." The conversation marked a subtle shift in their relationship, moving from active hostility to cautious cooperation. Maya wasn't ready to forgive Marcus completely, but she could acknowledge his apparent effort to change his behavior and make restitution for his actions. Her partnership discussions with Amanda accelerated as new client inquiries continued flowing in from the wedding reception connections. The Henderson restaurant chain project alone would require a team of 6 people working for 8 months, while the Kowalski real estate development campaign needed immediate attention to coincide with their spring property launches. "You're at a crossroads," Amanda observed during their third meeting, held in Maya's cramped loft office. "You can either turn down significant opportunities to maintain your current structure, or you can evolve the business to meet the demand you've created." Maya looked around her small workspace, remembering how proud she'd been to afford even this modest setup just a year earlier. The freelance graphic designer who'd struggled to pay for a bridesmaid dress was rapidly becoming the creative director of a multi-million-dollar agency. But the transition required letting go of the control that had sustained her through the lean years. The decision crystallized when she received a call from Thomas Meridian himself, the restaurant chain's founder, who wanted to discuss expanding their contract to include international market development. The opportunity was extraordinary, potentially tripling the value of their existing agreement, but it would require resources and expertise that Maya couldn't provide alone. "I need you to think bigger," Thomas said during their video conference call. "Your work on our domestic rebranding has exceeded our expectations, but we're looking at expansion into European and Asian markets. This isn't just about design anymore, it's about cultural translation and global brand strategy." Maya's excitement was tempered by honest self-assessment of her limitations. International branding required language expertise, cultural knowledge, and regulatory understanding that were far beyond her current capabilities. The project would need a team of specialists working in coordination with her creative vision. "What's your timeline for the international expansion?" she asked, buying time to consider whether Luna Creative could realistically take on such a massive undertaking. "We want to launch simultaneously in London, Berlin, Tokyo, and Singapore within 18 months. The right creative partner would essentially become our global brand steward, handling everything from market research to launch campaigns." After the call ended, Maya sat in her loft staring at the city skyline and contemplating the Mad Majudacy opportunity Thomas had just presented. The international contract would establish Luna Creative as a major player in global branding, but it would also require transforming her small agency into something resembling the large firms she'd always seen as competitors rather than peers. Amanda's partnership proposal suddenly seemed less like a compromise and more like a necessity. The infrastructure, expertise, and management systems required for international client work were far beyond what Maya could develop quickly enough to meet Thomas's timeline. That evening, Maya called Amanda and requested an emergency meeting to discuss not just partnership terms, but accelerated expansion plans that could support global client work. Amanda arrived at the loft within an hour, her expression shifting from curious to amazed as Maya described the Meridian international opportunity. This changes everything, Amanda said, pulling out her laptop to begin sketching organizational charts. We're not talking about gradual growth anymore. We're talking about immediate transformation into a mid-sized agency with international capabilities. They worked until 3 in the morning, developing a structure that could absorb the talent and resources for global branding work while maintaining the innovative culture that had attracted clients in the first place. The plan required bringing in additional senior staff, establishing international partnerships, and creating quality control systems that could ensure consistency across multiple time zones and cultural contexts. It's ambitious, Amanda admitted as they finalized the preliminary framework. But it's also exactly the kind of challenge that excites me. If we can pull this off, Luna Creative will be one of the most impressive agency success stories in the industry. Maya felt the familiar mixture of excitement and terror that had driven her throughout her entrepreneurial journey. The stakes kept getting higher, but so did her confidence in her ability to meet them. The woman who'd been humiliated at her brother's wedding was rapidly becoming someone who commanded respect in boardrooms across multiple continents. The formal partnership agreement with Amanda was signed 3 weeks later, with Maya retaining majority ownership while Amanda took responsibility for operations and international expansion. Their first major hire was David Kim, a former McKinsey consultant who specialized in global market entry strategies and could provide the analytical framework necessary for international branding campaigns. The Grand Rosewood renovation timeline was adjusted to accommodate the new business priorities, with the venue opening delayed by 6 months to ensure proper focus on the Meridian International project. Rather than viewing this as a setback, Maya began to see it as strategic patience that would allow her to approach the venue development with greater resources and expertise. Her relationship with her parents continued evolving as they witnessed her transformation from struggling freelancer to agency executive. Eleanor had become one of Luna Creative's most valuable advisors, using her extensive social connections to generate introductions with potential clients who appreciated working with agencies that understood their cultural and social context. "I'm proud of how you've handled all this pressure," Eleanor told Maya during one of their weekly breakfast meetings. "A year ago, I worried that you weren't practical enough to succeed in business. Now I realize that your creativity and your business sense were always connected. I just didn't understand how." Richard had been slower to acknowledge Maya's success, his traditional mindset making it difficult to accept that creative industries could generate the kind of wealth he associated with finance and real estate. But even he couldn't ignore the financial projections that showed Luna Creative on track to generate more revenue in its second year than many established firms achieved in their fifth. "Your profit margins are impressive," he admitted during a family dinner, reviewing the financial statements Maya had shared. "I still don't understand exactly what you do, but I can see that you're doing it profitably." The acknowledgement meant more to Maya than she'd expected. Her father's approval had always been tied to conventional metrics of success, and earning his respect through financial performance felt like validation of her decision to pursue entrepreneurship despite his initial skepticism. Marcus's therapy sessions were yielding gradual improvements in their relationship, though the process was slower than Maya had hoped. He'd begun acknowledging the pattern of competitive behavior that had characterized their interaction since childhood, recognizing how his need to feel superior had motivated many of his cruel comments over the years. "I used to think that putting you down was harmless because you always seemed so resilient," he explained during one of their carefully structured coffee meetings. "I told myself I was just teasing, but really I was trying to maintain a sense of dominance in our relationship." Maya appreciated his honesty while still feeling frustrated by the years of damage his behavior had caused. "Resilience isn't the same as being unaffected, Marcus. I internalized a lot of those comments, and they made me doubt myself at crucial moments." "I know that now. Dr. Phillips has helped me understand how my insecurities drove me to diminish other people's achievements. I'm working on building confidence that doesn't depend on comparison or competition." The conversations were awkward and sometimes painful, but they represented progress toward a relationship based on mutual respect rather than sibling rivalry. Maya wasn't ready to fully trust Marcus again, but she could see genuine effort to change behavior patterns that had been deeply ingrained since childhood. The international expansion of Luna Creative proceeded more smoothly than Maya had dared to hope, with the London and Berlin market research phases yielding insights that would inform the entire global strategy. David Kim's analytical approach complemented Maya's creative vision perfectly, creating campaigns that resonated with local cultures while maintaining consistent brand identity across markets. Thomas Meridian was thrilled with the preliminary results, particularly the way Luna Creative had identified unique positioning opportunities in each target market that larger agencies had overlooked. The combination of Maya's innovative design sense and Amanda's operational expertise was producing work that stood out in crowded international markets. "You've exceeded our expectations in every category," Thomas reported during their monthly review meeting. "Brand recognition in our test markets is higher than we projected, and customer response to the creative campaigns has been overwhelmingly positive." The success of the international work attracted attention from other global brands, looking for agencies that could combine creative excellence with cultural sensitivity. Maya found herself fielding inquiries from technology companies, luxury goods manufacturers, and entertainment conglomerates that wanted to replicate the success Luna Creative had achieved for Meridian. By the 6-month anniversary of Marcus's wedding reception confrontation, Maya's small freelance operation had evolved into a 40-person agency with offices in Chicago, London, and Singapore. The transformation had been so rapid and dramatic that she sometimes felt disconnected from the woman who'd sat at table 12 just months earlier, watching her brother attempt to destroy her reputation. The Grand Rosewood Creative Center finally opened its doors on a crisp October evening, exactly 1 year after the wedding reception that had changed everything. Maya stood in the beautifully renovated space, surrounded by clients, employees, family members, and friends who'd supported her incredible journey from humiliation to triumph. The venue had been transformed into something that honored its historic elegance while embracing contemporary functionality. The crystal chandeliers now shared space with state-of-the-art projection systems that could display client presentations or artistic installations. The marble floors gleamed beneath carefully chosen contemporary furniture that created comfortable collaboration spaces without compromising the ballroom's architectural integrity. Eleanor moved through the crowd with obvious pride, introducing Maya to potential clients and sharing stories about her daughter's remarkable transformation. Richard engaged in animated conversations with other business leaders about the challenges and opportunities of creative industry entrepreneurship. Even Marcus attended, keeping a respectful distance but clearly supporting his sister's achievement. "A year ago, I stood in this room feeling like my world was falling apart," Maya told the assembled crowd during her opening remarks. "Tonight, I stand here knowing that sometimes our greatest challenges become our most valuable opportunities, but only if we're willing to do the hard work of turning pain into purpose." The applause that followed felt genuine and supportive, a stark contrast to the cruel laughter that had accompanied Marcus's speech just 12 months earlier. Maya looked around the transformed space and realized that she'd accomplished something far more significant than proving her brother wrong. She'd built something meaningful that would create opportunities for other creative professionals for years to come. Amanda approached with a glass of champagne and a satisfied smile. "So, what's next, partner? I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Maya considered the question as she surveyed her thriving agency and the people who'd believed in her vision when she'd barely believed in it herself. The international expansion was ahead of schedule, new client inquiries arrived daily, and the venue was already booked solid for the next 6 months with corporate events and creative showcases. "Next, we proved that this wasn't just a lucky break or a reaction to family drama," Maya replied, raising her glass in a toast. "We proved that Luna Creative can sustain with success and use it to help other businesses tell their stories authentically and powerfully." The celebration continued late into the evening, with conversations ranging from creative strategy to family reconciliation to the challenges of rapid business growth. Maya moved through the crowd with confidence she'd never possessed before, equally comfortable discussing profit margins with investors and design principles with fellow creatives. As the last guests departed and the catering staff finished cleaning up, Maya stood alone in the empty ballroom, where her transformation had begun. The space felt full of possibility rather than painful memories, transformed by her own efforts into something that reflected her values and ambitions rather than her brother's cruel judgments. The journey from freelance graphic designer to agency executive had been accelerated by public humiliation. but Maya understood that sustaining her success would require different skills than achieving it had. The next chapter of her story would be about building systems and relationships that could support long-term growth rather than just responding to immediate challenges. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Proud of you for turning that nightmare into a dream. Can't wait to see what year 2 brings." Maya smiled as she typed her response. Year 2 is going to be about proving that this wasn't just a fluke. We're building something that will outlast any single client or project. As she walked toward the exit of her beautifully renovated venue, Maya felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with revenge or proving anyone wrong. She transformed her pain into purpose, her humiliation into opportunity, and her family's dysfunction into motivation for building something healthy and sustainable. The woman who left the Grand Rosewood Creative Center that night was fundamentally different from the one who'd fled in tears 12 months earlier. Not because her circumstances had changed, but because she'd discovered reserves of strength and capability that had always existed within her, waiting for the right catalyst to bring them to the surface. 2 years after the wedding reception that changed her life, Maya stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office in the Luna Creative headquarters, watching the morning sun cast long shadows across downtown Chicago. The view from the 40th floor of the Willis Tower encompassed the entire city she'd grown to love in new ways, from the gleaming lakefront to the neighborhoods where her team members lived and worked. The agency's growth had exceeded every projection she'd made during those frantic early months. Luna Creative now employed over 200 people across 6 international offices, with annual revenue approaching $50 million. The Meridian Restaurant Group contract had evolved into a global partnership that included hotel chains, entertainment venues, and luxury retail concepts spanning 3 continents. But success at this scale brought complexities that Maya's freelance years had never prepared her for. Employee satisfaction surveys, quarterly board meetings with institutional investors, regulatory compliance across multiple jurisdictions, and the constant pressure to maintain growth rates that satisfied stakeholders who measured progress in percentage points rather than creative achievements. Amanda knocked on Maya's office door, carrying 2 cups of coffee and the monthly financial reports that had become ritual reading every 3rd Tuesday. Their partnership had evolved into genuine friendship built on mutual respect and complementary skills, though the pressures of rapid expansion had tested both their professional relationship and personal boundaries. The Singapore office exceeded their quarterly targets by 18%, Amanda reported, settling into the chair across from Maya's desk. David's team landed the electronics manufacturer contract we've been pursuing for 6 months, and the cultural adaptation work for the European luxury brands is generating interest from competitors who want to poach our staff. Maya accepted the coffee gratefully, her attention focused on the staff retention report that showed concerning trends in their London office. 3 senior designers had left for competitor agencies in the past month, citing burnout and concerns about work-life balance in an organization that had grown too quickly to maintain its original collaborative culture. "What's our response to the London situation?" Maya asked, recognizing that employee turnover was often the first indicator of deeper organizational problems that could undermine everything they'd built. "I've scheduled video calls with each department head this week to assess morale and identify specific issues. The preliminary feedback suggests that people feel disconnected from the creative vision that originally attracted them to Luna Creative. They're working on high-profile projects, but they don't feel personally invested in the outcomes." The irony wasn't lost on Maya that her agency's success was creating exactly the kind of corporate environment she'd always wanted to avoid. The passionate, collaborative culture that had fueled their initial growth was being diluted by the systems and structures necessary to manage a global operation. Her personal assistant entered with a reminder about the afternoon's most important meeting. Thomas Meridian was flying in to discuss a potential acquisition offer that would make Luna Creative a subsidiary of his expanding hospitality empire. The proposal was financially attractive, offering Maya and her partners immediate liquidity and access to resources that could accelerate their global expansion exponentially. But the acquisition would also mean surrendering the independence that had been fundamental to Maya's vision from the beginning. Thomas was a supportive client and respected business leader, but his management philosophy emphasized efficiency and scalability over the creative risks that had distinguished Luna Creative's work in the marketplace. "Are you having second thoughts about the meeting?" Amanda asked, reading Maya's expression with the familiarity that came from 2 years of navigating complex decisions together. "I'm having second thoughts about a lot of things," Maya admitted, turning away from the window to face her partner directly. "Remember when our biggest worry was whether we could afford new design software or find enough freelancers to handle overflow work? Those were simpler times, but they were also more precarious. You couldn't have predicted how far we'd come or how quickly it would happen." Maya nodded, understanding that nostalgia for simpler challenges was a luxury afforded by current success. The struggling freelancer who'd asked Marcus for payment plan assistance would have been amazed by the problems that now kept her awake at night: international tax strategies, intellectual property protection, and maintaining quality control across time zones and cultural contexts. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor, who had become not just a family advisor, but a trusted confidant during the most stressful periods of Luna Creative's expansion. "Lunch today? I have something important to discuss." The mysterious tone was unusual for Eleanor, who typically approached conversations with the directness that had made her successful in Chicago's competitive social landscape. Maya confirmed the lunch appointment, curious about what could require such careful setup. The restaurant Eleanor had chosen was one of their old favorites, a quiet Italian place in Lincoln Park where they'd shared many conversations during Maya's freelance struggles. The familiar environment felt comforting as Maya contemplated the weight of decisions that would determine not just her own future, but the careers of 200 employees who'd trusted their professional growth to Luna Creative's continued success. Eleanor was already seated when Maya arrived, studying the menu with the concentration she typically reserved for complex social situations that required careful navigation. "You look tired," Eleanor observed as Maya settled into her chair. "The international expansion is taking a toll." "It's worth it," Maya replied automatically, then paused to consider whether she actually believed that statement. "At least, I think it's worth it. Some days I'm not sure whether we're building something meaningful or just getting caught up in the momentum of our own success." Eleanor smiled with the understanding that came from her own experience navigating the pressures of high-stakes business environments. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Your father and I have been discussing some changes in our own lives, and we wanted to get your perspective before making any final decisions." The surprise in Maya's expression must have been obvious because Eleanor laughed softly before continuing. "I know it seems strange to ask for business advice from our daughter, but you've proven that you understand things about building sustainable success that we're still learning. What kind of changes are you considering?" Eleanor looked around the restaurant as if gathering courage for an admission that challenged everything Maya thought she knew about her parents' priorities. "Your father wants to sell the investment firm and pursue some projects that interest him personally rather than just generating maximum returns. I want to open the art gallery I gave up when I got married." The revelation was so unexpected that Maya forgot to respond for several seconds. Her parents had always represented conventional success and practical decision-making, prioritizing financial security over personal fulfillment in ways that had shaped their criticism of her own career choices. "What changed?" Maya finally asked. "Watching you build Luna Creative showed us that there doesn't have to be a choice between financial success and personal satisfaction. You've created something that generates substantial wealth while also reflecting your values and interests. We realized that we'd been so focused on accumulating resources that we'd forgotten to consider what we actually wanted to do with them." Eleanor pulled out her tablet, showing Maya preliminary business plans for the gallery concept she'd been developing. The proposal was sophisticated and well-researched, incorporating lessons from successful gallery operations while identifying underserved market segments in Chicago's art community. "I've been working with a consultant who specializes in cultural nonprofit organizations, and the financial projections are actually quite promising. The tax advantages of operating as a charitable foundation, combined with the social impact potential, create multiple revenue streams that could sustain operations while supporting emerging artists." Maya studied the business plan with growing amazement at her mother's thorough preparation and creative thinking. The woman who dismissed artistic careers as impractical had developed a sophisticated strategy for making art financially sustainable while serving educational and cultural purposes.
This is incredible, Mom.
The market analysis is thorough, and the programming concept would fill a real need in the community. Have you talked to any potential board members or funding sources? That's where I was hoping you might help. Your success has given you access to networks that could be valuable for both funding and partnerships. Several of Luna Creative's clients might be interested in supporting cultural initiatives, and your experience with startup operations could help me avoid common mistakes. The conversation continued for 2 hours as Maya and Eleanor discussed everything from organizational structure to marketing strategies for the proposed gallery. Maya found herself energized by the creative challenge of helping her mother transform a long-deferred dream into a viable business plan. But the discussion also highlighted the contrast between Eleanor's careful, deliberate approach to career change and Maya's own impulsive leap into agency expansion. Her mother was taking time to research, plan, and build consensus before making major commitments, while Maya had often relied on instinct and momentum to drive her decisions. Returning to her office after lunch, Maya felt a new perspective on the acquisition offer she'd be discussing with Thomas that afternoon. Eleanor's gallery project represented the kind of thoughtful, values-driven entrepreneurship that had originally motivated Maya's own business dreams, before the pressures of rapid growth had pushed her toward decisions based primarily on financial opportunity. Thomas arrived precisely on time for their meeting, accompanied by his chief financial officer and the investment banker who'd structured the acquisition proposal. Maya had invited Amanda and David to join the discussion, ensuring that all key stakeholders could evaluate the offer together. Maya, congratulations on another exceptional quarter, Thomas began, settling into the conference room that overlooked the Chicago River. The work your team has done for our Asia-Pacific expansion exceeded our most optimistic projections. Brand recognition in those markets is higher than we achieved in any of our domestic launches. The praise was genuine and well-deserved, but Maya detected the strategic setup for the more serious conversation that would follow. Thomas was known for his direct communication style, but he also understood the importance of establishing positive context before presenting complex proposals. The acquisition offer we discussed last month has been refined based on your feedback and our updated valuation analysis, he continued, nodding to his CFO to present the financial details. We're proposing a purchase price of $90 million for full ownership of Luna Creative, with additional performance bonuses that could bring the total to $120 million over 3 years. The numbers were staggering, representing more wealth than Maya had ever imagined accumulating during her freelance years. But the proposal also included management changes that would fundamentally alter Luna Creative's culture and operational philosophy. The integration plan calls for Luna Creative to become the creative services division of Meridian Hospitality Group, the investment banker explained. Maya would serve as creative director to all Meridian properties globally, while Amanda would manage client services for external accounts. The combined resources would allow for expansion into markets that are currently beyond Luna Creative's reach. Maya listened carefully to the presentation, recognizing both the opportunities and the limitations embedded in Thomas's vision for their future. The financial security was appealing, and the chance to work exclusively on high-profile hospitality projects would eliminate many of the client management challenges that had become increasingly stressful. But the proposal would also mean surrendering the independence that had been central to Luna Creative's identity from the beginning. The diverse client base that had fueled their creative growth would be replaced by a single corporate relationship, however lucrative and prestigious. What happens to our current client relationships? Amanda asked, voicing the concern that Maya had been considering. Existing contracts would be honored through completion, but new business development would focus exclusively on Meridian properties and strategic partnerships that support our hospitality goals, Thomas replied. The creative team would have guaranteed project flow and resources that most agencies can only dream of. David raised questions about international operations and staff retention, while Amanda explored the implications for their London and Singapore offices. Maya found herself thinking about the 3 designers who'd recently left their London team, citing concerns about corporate bureaucracy and creative limitations. The meeting concluded with Thomas giving them 2 weeks to consider the offer and provide a formal response. As the Meridian team departed, Maya, Amanda, and David remained in the conference room to process the complexity of the decision they faced. Financially, it's an incredible opportunity, David observed, reviewing his notes from the presentation. The valuation multiples are higher than comparable transactions in our sector, and the performance bonuses provide protection against integration risks. But creatively, it's limiting, Amanda countered. Some of our best work has come from the diversity of our client base. Working exclusively in hospitality could make us very good at one thing, while losing the innovation that comes from cross-industry challenges. Maya appreciated both perspectives, while struggling with her own conflicted feelings about the proposal. The acquisition would solve many of their operational challenges, while providing financial security that could support personal projects like Eleanor's gallery concept. But it would also represent the end of the entrepreneurial journey that had defined her identity since leaving her freelance practice. That evening, Maya drove to the Grand Rosewood Creative Center for the monthly all-hands meeting where she updated the entire staff on company performance and strategic initiatives. The venue had become a symbol of Luna Creative's success, but it also reminded her of the values and relationships that had motivated her transformation from struggling freelancer to agency executive. The meeting included presentations from each international office, showcasing projects that demonstrated the creative excellence and cultural sensitivity that had become Luna Creative's signature strengths. Maya watched her colleagues' enthusiasm for their work and felt the weight of responsibility for decisions that would affect not just her own future, but the careers of people who'd trusted their professional growth to her leadership. During the question and answer session, several employees asked about rumors regarding acquisition discussions with Meridian. Maya had anticipated the questions and prepared honest responses that acknowledged the ongoing conversations without revealing specific details that could create unnecessary anxiety. We're always evaluating opportunities that could strengthen our capabilities and expand our impact, she explained. Any major decisions will be made with careful consideration of what's best for our team and our clients. Your input and concerns are important parts of that evaluation process. After the meeting, Maya remained in the venue's main ballroom, the same space where Marcus had attempted to humiliate her 3 years earlier. The transformation of both the physical space and her own circumstances was remarkable, but she found herself questioning whether the success she'd achieved aligned with the values that had originally motivated her entrepreneurial journey. Zoe found her there an hour later, sitting quietly in one of the comfortable chairs that faced the stage where Maya regularly presented to clients and colleagues. Their friendship had remained strong despite the demands of Maya's expanding responsibilities, though they saw each other less frequently than during the early agency years. "Rough day?" Zoe asked, settling into the adjacent chair with the familiarity of someone who'd supported Maya through every stage of her professional evolution. "Complex day. Thomas made a formal acquisition offer that's financially generous, but would fundamentally change everything we've built here." Zoe listened as Maya described the Meridian proposal and her own conflicted feelings about surrendering the independence that had been central to Luna Creative's identity. The conversation helped Maya articulate concerns that had been developing subconsciously as the agency's success created pressure to pursue opportunities based primarily on financial potential. "What does your gut tell you?" Zoe asked, echoing the question that had guided Maya through many previous decisions. "My gut says that we've built something special here, and I'm not sure whether making it bigger and more profitable is worth the risk of losing what makes it meaningful." Then maybe the question isn't whether to accept Thomas's offer, but whether there are other ways to achieve your goals that don't require giving up control. The insight was simple but profound, refocusing Maya's attention on alternatives that had been obscured by the binary choice between accepting or rejecting the acquisition proposal. Luna Creative's success had created options beyond the extremes of remaining completely independent or selling to a larger corporation. Over the following week, Maya initiated conversations with her leadership team about creative alternatives to the Meridian acquisition. The discussions revealed innovative approaches to growth that could provide financial security while preserving the cultural values that had attracted their most talented employees. Amanda proposed a partial sales structure that would bring Meridian in as a minority investor rather than acquiring full control. The arrangement would provide capital for expansion while maintaining Luna Creative's independence and diverse client base. David suggested exploring partnerships with other creative agencies that could provide international capabilities without corporate integration. Maya found herself most intrigued by a concept that emerged from discussions with Eleanor about the gallery project. transforming Luna Creative into a creative foundation that could support multiple initiatives while maintaining financial sustainability. The model would allow the agency to pursue profitable client work while also supporting artistic projects and cultural programs that reflected Maya's broader interests. The foundation concept gained momentum when Maya discovered that several of their current clients were interested in supporting cultural initiatives as part of their corporate social responsibility programs. The tax advantages and public relations benefits of partnering with a creative foundation could provide revenue streams that reduce dependence on traditional client services. By the time Thomas called to schedule a follow-up meeting, Maya had developed a comprehensive alternative proposal that addressed the growth and resource challenges that had motivated his acquisition offer. The plan was ambitious and unconventional, but it reflected lessons learned from 3 years of rapid expansion and the values that had originally driven her entrepreneurial journey. I appreciate the acquisition offer, and I understand the strategic benefits for both organizations, Maya began when Thomas arrived for their meeting. But I'd like to propose an alternative that could achieve your goals while preserving Luna Creative's independence and creative culture. She outlined the foundation concept, explaining how it could provide Meridian with preferred access to Luna Creative services while allowing the agency to maintain its diverse client base and innovative approach to problem solving. The partnership would include collaboration on hospitality projects while supporting cultural initiatives that could enhance Meridian's brand reputation. Thomas listened carefully to the presentation, asking detailed questions about financial structure and operational logistics. His response was more positive than Maya had expected, particularly when she explained how the foundation model could provide Meridian with unique marketing opportunities through association with artistic and cultural programs. "This is more creative than I anticipated," Thomas admitted. "The foundation structure could actually provide more value to Meridian than direct ownership, especially if it generates positive publicity and enhances our brand positioning in cultural markets." The negotiations that followed were complex but productive, resulting in a strategic partnership that provided Luna Creative with capital and resources while preserving its independence. Meridian became the foundation's anchor client and primary sponsor, while Luna Creative maintained the freedom to pursue diverse projects and support cultural initiatives. The announcement of the Luna Creative Foundation generated significant media attention, positioning Maya as an innovative leader who'd found a new model for balancing commercial success with artistic and cultural impact. The partnership with Meridian provided financial stability, while the foundation structure attracted clients who valued working with organizations that demonstrated commitment to broader social purposes. 6 months after the foundation launch, Maya stood once again in the Grand Rosewood Creative Center, this time addressing an audience that included not just Luna Creative employees, but also artists, community leaders, and cultural organization representatives who'd become partners in the foundation's expanding mission. The venue had been further transformed to accommodate exhibitions and performances alongside corporate events and client meetings. The integration of artistic programming with commercial activities had created a unique environment that reflected Maya's vision for businesses that could be both profitable and meaningful. 3 years ago, I stood in this room feeling like my world was falling apart, Maya told the assembled crowd. Tonight, I stand here knowing that sometimes our greatest challenges become our most valuable opportunities, but only if we're willing to do the hard work of turning pain into purpose. The audience included Marcus and Sophia, whose relationship had grown stronger as Marcus continued his therapy and personal development work. Maya's brother had become one of the foundation's financial advisors, using his investment expertise to support the cultural initiatives that had once seemed so impractical to their family. Eleanor was preparing to open her gallery as one of the foundation's first major cultural partnerships, with Luna Creative providing branding and marketing support in exchange for exhibition space and programming collaboration. The project represented everything Maya had learned about combining business acumen with artistic vision. Richard had indeed sold his investment firm, using the proceeds to establish a venture capital fund focused on supporting creative entrepreneurs and cultural enterprises. His traditional business perspective, combined with Maya's experience in creative industries, had proven valuable for evaluating opportunities that established investors often overlooked. As the evening concluded and guests gradually departed, Maya found herself alone in the ballroom where her transformation had begun. The space felt full of possibility rather than painful memories, transformed by her own efforts into something that reflected her values and ambitions rather than her brother's cruel judgments. Amanda joined her for a final glass of wine as they reviewed the evening's conversations and planned the foundation's next initiatives. Their partnership had evolved beyond business collaboration into genuine friendship built on shared values and complementary skills. "Any regrets about turning down Thomas's acquisition offer?" Amanda asked. Maya considered the question as she looked around the venue that had become headquarters for an organization that employed over 300 people while supporting dozens of cultural projects. The foundation model had exceeded every projection for both financial performance and social impact. "The only regret I have is that it took Marcus's wedding speech to force me to recognize my own potential," Maya replied. "Everything that followed was just the natural result of finally believing in myself and surrounding myself with people who shared that belief." The conversation continued until nearly midnight, covering everything from the foundation's expansion plans to their personal goals for the coming year. Maya felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with revenge or proving anyone wrong. She'd transformed her pain into purpose, her humiliation into opportunity, and her family's dysfunction into motivation for building something healthy and sustainable. As she walked toward the exit of her beautifully transformed venue, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her from struggling freelancer to foundation executive. The woman who left the Grand Rosewood Creative Center that night was fundamentally different from the one who'd fled in tears 4 years earlier. Not because her circumstances had changed, but because she'd discovered reserves of strength and capability that had always existed within her. The foundation's work would continue expanding, supporting creative professionals while demonstrating that businesses could be both profitable and purposeful. Maya had built something that would outlast any single project or client relationship, a legacy that reflected her values while creating opportunities for others to pursue their own artistic and entrepreneurial dreams. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Proud of you for building something that matters. Looking forward to seeing what year 5 brings." Maya smiled as she typed her response. Year 5 is going to be about proving that the foundation model can be replicated by other creative entrepreneurs. We're building a movement, not just a business. The words felt true in a way that went beyond professional ambition or financial success. Maya had discovered that her greatest satisfaction came not from accumulating wealth or winning recognition, but from creating systems that could support other people's creative and entrepreneurial aspirations. The humiliation that had driven her from Marcus's wedding reception had become the catalyst for building something far more meaningful than she'd ever imagined possible. The venue where her brother had tried to destroy her reputation had become the headquarters for an organization that was reshaping how creative businesses could operate while maintaining their artistic integrity. Maya's story had become proof that sometimes the most devastating defeats could become the foundation for unprecedented victories, but only for those willing to transform their pain into purpose and their challenges into opportunities for growth. The foundation she'd built would continue that work long after her own direct involvement, supporting future generations of creative entrepreneurs who need examples of what was possible when vision aligned with determination. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.